participation and for your attendance for the conference. Now we'll maintain the technical issue and thank you very much. I will try to make my presentation shortly. So idea is to discuss how the cultural components can be implemented to the language policy and what kind of aspects should be analyzed and should be considered in this regard. The aim of the presentation is to discuss the Georgian data in terms of the main amendments in this case. First of all, what is the main, let's say, main makeup of the modern world? It's migration, multilingualism, multiculturalism is the main makeup of the modern world. Consequently, these processes can have its benefits and challenges as well. Benefits is quite clear, and challenges in this case, in this regard, could be considered as follows: assimilation, acceptance of closed communities, and what it can be said that in modern era culture is already beyond the borders, and culture is bounded to the specific space all over the place. In this case, how to solve the problem, and first of all, one of the main steps towards considering these issues would be the establishing and building up the civic identity, and it's possible in order to fulfill the language policy and cultural policy in compliance, and to develop the cultural sensitivity. Thus, when we are discussing the civic identity, we need to consider that national identity has its own a few phases and a few types, and the modern stuff should be followed. The civic identity, establishing the civic identity could be the very purpose of the language and cultural policy. When we are discussing civic identity, it's more inclusive identity, not characterized with a strong ethnic attachments in opposite of ethnic nationalism. And the hybrid identity is a mixture of ethnic nationalism and civic identity, which is more development and something in between those two types. It's well known that society, establishing society, development of society, culture and language, these are the notions and cycling between each other, and it can be said that language is a very powerful symbol of cultural identity. That's why the language and cultural policy are strictly bound into each other. It's well known, right, in the literature that culture can be compared to the iceberg, where the visual culture can be the type of culture which is visible, and the more, let's say, invisible and subjective culture is what's invisible, what is under the water, and it means it's considered to be a cultural beliefs, prejudice, small talk, and all the other things. It's a well-known thing, and consequently, to establish the developed cultural sensitivity within the modern society is one of the main challenges and important goals of the both language and cultural policies. What is cultural policies? It's approaches, a set of governmental and institutional strategies, guidelines, and actions. It varies from country to country, and all the guidelines can be specific for each state. Here are the few important aspects which are characteristic for the cultural policy, starting from cultural preservation to the education and training. All these aspects are the main key points for the developing and implementing the proper cultural policies. And as for the language policies, it's also the set of principles, rules, arguments, and actions and standards which are managed and governed by the officials of each country. And here are also the key points and main aspects of the language policy. And now we need to discuss how to implement cultural aspects within the language policy and what should be considered for the country as Georgia is in this case. And here we can see that incorporation of issues of culture in terms of language policies could be as follows. First of all, it's multilingual education. It's increasing the cultural competencies of both minority and domain societies, recognition of cultural holidays and bilingual and multilingual introduced also could be the signs of the incorporation of culture in language policies. These are the main aspects of generally on the experience of the different countries. As for the European Union EU policies, which considers aspects of language and cultural policies, and here we can see again the multilingualism is one of the main features of EU policies. 24 official languages. Since I want to shorten my presentation, I will just give a main accent in this case. Translation and interpretation is also one of the main features of EU language learning, cultural initiatives, protection of minority languages, also cultural heritage preservation is one of the main goals in this regard, media and audiovisual policies, intercultural dialogue and planning for cultural projects. Of course, all of the aspects have own benefits and challenges, which also vary from country to country. And now I would like to give a brief overview of association agreement between the European Union and Georgia, which was signed in 2016, and it's a comprehensive document which covers all the main aspects of Georgian political, culture, and social life, economic life as well, and issues of culture and language policies are also mentioned in the document. And one of the things is the language policy, considering multilingualism, cultural and linguistic rights, language learning and exchange to the EU countries, the Erasmus programs as well. Also, in terms of cultural policy, cultural cooperation, preserving the historical monuments and historical heritage, also supporting the creative industries are mentioned and emphasized in this agreement. And when we're discussing these cultural aspects, in case of Georgia should be considered a few things. First of all, the local context, historical context in this case, Soviet heritage as well, which is really tough for Georgia and for other Soviet countries. What is the modern situation like, and what are the ongoing projects towards implementing cultural and language policies in this case. First of all, when we are discussing the situation and let's say landscape of Georgia, what first comes is the tolerant diversity. On the picture, there is the Tbilisi and Tbilisi frontier, where the different diverse, let's say, ethnic representatives were living together, and you can see that in this case, preserving privacy was less possible because in this situation, openness and diversity is one of the main features of Tbilisi frontier and society in this case. When we are discussing the historical context, I just would like to give you a few information from just the text from John Chardin's the text. He used to be a traveler who traveled in Georgia during at the end of the 17th century. viewpoint of Georgia, diversity, ethnic diversity, and tolerance could be one of the main features in this case. And another traveler who is describing is Alexander Duman. Here you can see that again the different ethnicities are living in Georgia, Turks, Armenians, Persians, Arabs. So again, at the end of 19th century, diversity, ethnic diversity is mentionable for the society as well. And in modern period, Georgia is real multicultural and multilingual country. A part of Georgia, different languages are in the Kartvelian language, different languages are spoken on the territory of Georgia, Greek, Ossetian, Armenian, Azerbaijani, Buddhist, Cherkassi, and many others. And ethnic minorities constitute about 16% of total population of Georgia, and ethnic Armenians and Azerbaijanis are completely settled on the territory of Georgia, and that's one of the, as it was discussed in the previous session, teaching Georgian state language to ethnic minorities, especially to ethnic Azerians and Armenians, could be is one of the key points to the Georgian language policy. And when we are discussing the cultural aspects in terms of Georgian language policy, here are the theoretical framework. Here are a few aspects which can be analyzed in the presentation. That the presentation needs to give an analytical approach towards the issue. And when we are discussing the language in education, we need to say that here are a few projects started from 2005 were implemented in Georgia, and nowadays one of the successful programs is 1+4, and also multilingual programs in Georgian language schools, which is planned to cover all the non-Georgian schools could be covered by 2030, and the National Center for Teacher Professional Development is one of the key actors towards fulfilling the language policy and implementing cultural issues in this case. Also, the Ministry of Education and Science in Georgia, especially the Department of National Teaching Planning, they are working on the curricular in this regard, and the teaching of endangered languages, especially the Latvian languages, also are considered within the policy. And of course, in this case, maybe there is no special documents dedicated to cultural policy, but all the cultural elements and amendments are fit within the document, and within the implementation of cultural issues are the aims of all of the projects in this case. As for the media and broadcasting, majority of the territorially settled regions of Georgia, there are the local TV channels and radio broadcasting, also language, cultural heritage initiatives. There are about 19 governmental organizations or Azerbaijani organizations who are covering the different issues, also concerning let's say, issues of gender equality and cultural stuff as well. Support for minor terms to support for minority languages, different curricula and textbooks are developed, and the next presenter will speak about it. More dictionaries are developed in this case. Also, there are public administration services in terms to support ethnic minorities and cultural competency trainings. This aspect is one of the key points as we saw implementing cultural elements to the language policy. And here we can say that there are a few trainings concerning gender equality and also the multilingual education. There is a program, multilingual education at TSU, integrating bachelor's and master's program of teacher training. There are special courses developing and raising the cultural competencies of these students. Language planning and legislation, also the cultural aspects are somehow implemented in this section, cultural festivals and events of minorities and phase. And finally, as a conclusion here, also the spheres which can be covered in this phase. And finally, as a conclusion, when we are discussing preserving the cultural identity, developing the cultural identity, there are two different situations during the Soviet regime when the ethnic minorities were strongly expressed ethnic identity, and nowadays when the situation is turned in modern Georgia, when the national identity was switched towards to progress towards hybrid character. And all these things, this development and progress can be linked to the implementation of cultural elements to the language of policy. Of course, still we face a bunch of challenges against language proficiency, research materials, strong ethnic identity for the specific communities, and programs can be developed, and we will continue working in this. Thank you very much for your attention.